and they're really just trying to hate on Chris Pratt.
Of course they
Do
are.
they really believe? Does anybody truly believe that an R-rated movie for a 9 or 10-year-old is somehow going to disrupt them or psychologically traumatize them in some way that they cannot function in this world? Hey, everybody. Welcome back to The Beard and the Bald. I am Paul Shirey, the Beard. It's growing back. And I am with the bald Christopher Bumbray.
Hey, I'm still in LA.
Still in Los Angeles, drinking, I don't know, I don't think that's coffee. That looks like
it's a strawberry acai refresher from Starbucks. Non-alcoholic. I drank so much over the last week. I've been really kind of it's funny, like when I spent a bunch of extra money doing this. I booked bookends on the trip, like in LA, because I never get to LA, and I thought I'd have fun. And so the first 2 days I had fun, and I was staying at a shitty hotel. I was at the Super 8, but it was fine. But I had fun. I went to a screening, and then I met up with a buddy of mine on Monday. And then I tell you, as soon as VidCon was over, because I drank so much the whole time and was up, I just wanted to go home. But I still had these 2 days. The hotel was non-refundable, so it was and it was like $500 or something like that. So I was because I'm staying at a nicer hotel.
This is for post VidCon. We're talking
VidCon. Yeah. Okay, and I'm staying at a nicer hotel because I thought I was going to go out and get wasted with my buddy who lives in LA last night. And I just didn't feel like it at all. So I've been recovering for the last 2 days. I've kind of been in the hotel room, going out a bit, but kind of just recovering, catching up on sleep. And then I'm leaving. Then I'm leaving tomorrow at around mid-afternoon.
Okay.
And I mean, I miss home.
I thought you might have been leaving today. That's why
I kind of miss home. I kind of want to get back, but although apparently I'm missing a heat wave back home, so that's good. It's I think I'm seeing a friend tonight, but really chill, not going crazy.
That famous last words.
It will be.
Don't go to any of the tiki bars in LA then.
No, I went to see. Yeah, I did yesterday when I arrived at the hotel though. I went to see Elvis because I have to do my TV review of it in a couple hours for CTV. So so I checked out Elvis. I got to see it I'd never been to a Regal cinema before.
Oh, really? That's all I go to is Regal. I mean, because
nice. It was good. It was good because the projection was excellent, and I've never seen because back home it's really hit and miss, and often it looks like crap. But it was the right bulb, it was the right color, and it looked great. It looked terrific. The movie, it was the way that I was glad that I got to see it that way. So it was nice. It was kind of cool.
Cool. Well, before we get into Elvis or anything else, this is a pretty special show for us, and something I'm really proud of. We have some interviews for the Terminal List this week.
Well, you have some interviews. I wasn't involved because I was busy.
Well. It's still Beard and the Bald interviews, and that's how they were set up, was for this show specifically, which makes me really happy. And it makes me equally happy because, as I talked about last week on the show, I love the show and I thought it was great.
Terminal List.
The Terminal List. And you still haven't been able to see it yet, right? You're still
but at Joe Blow, it's Terminal List week because we got everybody.
Yeah. While I was doing my interviews, they were like, "Oh, Jimmy O was just here," and I was like, "Oh,
yeah." Cool. Jimmy talked to Chris Pratt, Constance Wu, Taylor Kittich, Antoine Fuqua, Jack Carr, everybody.
Yeah. So we have Antoine Fuqua and David DiGilio who's the showrunner, and we also have Jack Carr for this show. So I was able to talk to them, and it was great. I had 15 minutes with Antoine and David. And what's really cool about that interview is right off the top, started talking about Tony Scott, which always makes me happy. And that was them that brought it up, which was even cooler. So they talk a little bit about the influences of Man on Fire, Tony Scott's Man on Fire on the Terminal List, which makes sense when you see the show. You see, it's very, very much the revenge aspect is very much built into Terminal List. So it's a great discussion with Antoine and Dave. We talked quite a bit about the show. We talk about Chris Pratt taking on the role and kind of how that all happened. And then ultimately, the tactics and everything that were worked into the show, which for me, because, you know, I was in the military, I'm a combat veteran. And to me, that stuff makes a difference. And it was something that I noticed right away in the show, which is really great. So without further ado, I'm going to lead off here with Antoine and Dave's interview for your enjoyment. And then we'll come back and set you guys up with Jack Carr. So here is Antoine Fuqua and Dave DiGilio for the Terminal List.
Want to tell me what happened? Somebody fed us bad intel. It was a setup.
I have 12 men flying home in caskets right now.
Answers or blood? Blood.
I'm sorry, I am not wearing my full beard today, so I feel like I've already disappointed you guys.
Yeah,
Well,
Antoine,
good,
man. He's got you
Antoine, you're gonna have to represent us.
I'm here, baby. I got you. Do it.
You got us covered, man. That's great.
Totally.
So gentlemen, I want to jump right into it because I want to suck up as much time as possible here with you guys. Yep. So right off the bat, I'm curious, what was the decision? What went into the decision to make the Terminal List a series instead of a feature film?
Mm-hmm. Well, when I read it, I saw it as a movie initially, but then I met with Chris and we talked a lot about it. And it just didn't have enough time to get all the details right, you know?
Right.
And then when we sat down with Dave, once we found Dave brought a psychological twist that really needed to be expanded more. And that sort of like made sense to do, you know, a series.
So I heard Chris Pratt talking on the Smartless podcast the other day, and he had said that he was trying to get the Terminal List. He was trying to option it, and you were trying to option it, Antoine. Right. And then you guys kind of just came to this agreement, like, let's do this together. Right. But I'm curious from you and from Dave here, what was it that made Pratt the right guy to play James Reese?
Yeah, what do you think?
I think it's you've mentioned this word before. It's dedication. Mm-hmm. Like Chris has a dedication to the craft, into the community that is really unparalleled. To see the way that he brings positivity and honors service mm-hmm. is remarkable. And then, you know, to hear Jack talk about it, you realize Jack actually pictured Chris in this role as he was writing the first novel, the manuscript, before it was published. Mm-hmm. And he pictured Antoine directing it. Yeah. And when you hear about that and the kind of power of positivity, and that's what's incredible about Jack Carr, the man is just this force of positivity. Mm-hmm. You realize, like, Jack kind of made this all happen just by doing that. Yeah. And then Jared Shaw found that book for Chris Pratt. And Chris, I think, read it and said, you know what? It's time for me to do a role that honors the community and that pushes Chris really as an actor. Yeah. And I was really excited about it because Man on Fire is one of my favorite movies. Mm-hmm. Love Tony Scott, rest in peace. And to see how Denzel really pushed things in that movie and really kind of made you question as you're watching him go through the cartel trying to get Peter back. I just was always on his side because Denzel is inherently likable no matter what he's doing. And you realize Chris is inherently likable no matter what he's doing. And he's an everyman. And so you're allowed, you kind of allow the audience to really put themselves in Chris's shoes. Imagine if all these things had happened. Like, could you do the things that he does? You know, it's an incredible journey that this character goes through in these 8 episodes. And I don't think any other actor on earth could have played James Reese.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because I mean that leads into my other question about Pratt. So I'm a combat veteran. I was in the 501st. I was in OEF, OIF.
Thanks for your service.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Your shirt there. You got
It was painful this year.
Painful.
I was so deeply impressed by Pratt's performance, not only like changing his complete persona. In my mind, this is kind of like almost the death of like the funny Chris Pratt and the birth of like action star Chris Pratt. It's really the first time that I was like, man, Pratt is killing it. Like he's really taking it to the next level. And it's kind of devoid of his usual, like kind of his comedy bits, which he's kind of become known for, but I didn't miss it. And I'm curious for you guys, like, was that difficult to get Pratt away from that aspect of his performance and to really focus on kind of this Rambo, Punisher style Navy SEAL character that he really embodies so well? How difficult was that for him to leave that behind?
I don't know how difficult it was for Chris personally, but for me, I saw it in Magnificent Seven. I spent a lot of time with him there, and I saw, there was not in a negative way, but there's a darkness that was there inherently, and there's a danger there with Chris, and I spent a lot of time, and as of now, with a lot of SEALs. And, the humor is the thing that always gets them through, as you would know as a vet. Sometimes the humor gets you
That's
through.
That's all you got.
That's all you got, right? And so, we hang out drinking, and these guys are funny as hell, man. They're great storytellers. They're really funny. But then, there's a switch, and there's a moment that things change. And Chris has that in him. And so it's like Jack Carr talks about how he saw Chris the way Tom Hanks was, and then he did Philadelphia.
Oh yeah, all those risk. Comedies.
The difference with Chris is physically, big.
Yeah,
he used to play football. So when I got to know Chris, I thought, I would love to do something darker with Chris. And so it was beautiful for me to watch.
And I think from the writing side, he made it pretty easy early on because he came in, he spoke. I brought you guys in to meet the writer's room. And I remember something he did, and we were like a Zoom room. So, we have 9 little squares breaking this story and getting ready to write these scripts. And Chris said something that stuck with us, which is, he's like, I only have one request, no movie star lines. We said, oh, but you're a movie star. He's like, nope, not this. No. He's like, I want it real. And I love that. My writing style is very Spartan, and to be able to like not have to go jokey, it's pretty awesome. But to know that there are characters in the story who can add that levity, comic relief. Ben Edwards has moments of bringing that lightness into that storyline. Constance Wu as Katie Burnick is cutting people up in a couple of places. And I think to take the burden off of Chris and to just let Chris play this real raw emotion, that's what he wanted. He's been looking for that.
And I think he honestly, like from my perspective, he nailed it. Like, and whatever you guys got out of him and whatever he brought to it, like it works like tremendously.
Incredible. Yeah,
it's so good.
Well, you saying that means the most.
Totally.
That's the goal.
Well, I mean, and that was going to be, another compliment that I wanted to throw you guys' way if you're accepting compliments. The tactics.
Why not?
I know that Jack Carr is on as executive producer and is heavily involved in the show itself. Yeah. But I got to say, there's moments where I'm watching the show, and I was like, yes, like just Reese clearing the stairs and changing the rifle from shoulder to shoulder, just like all the there's little subtle things in there that I know the guys like me are gonna be like, like they did their homework. Yeah, and I know that you guys had SEALs on set, you guys had people working with it, but it shows. And I think that authenticity is gonna bring viewers in and bring them back. That's something that I really appreciated from watching the show, just from my perspective.
Yeah, that's a level of respect we have for you guys that means the most.
Yeah,
it means the most.
It's appreciated, truly. It really is. I talk to guys, veterans, combat veterans. I mean, we'll be out running missions, but what do you think we do when we come back? We're in our hooch, we're watching movies, we're watching TV shows, we're playing video games, So it's like, it's kind of ironic. It's an ironic twist in that way.
Right.
We're coming back and watching that, but I'm telling you, they're calling bullshit right and left too.
I know.
We've seen the podcast.
I know.
The YouTube video.
It's hardcore too,
dude. Yeah. We hope we pass the test. I mean, it's a huge thing that you're talking about. Yeah. First of all, it begins on the page. Jack Carr's novels, just unreal.
Yeah.
The author.
So detailed.
Right? So detailed. And so how do you bring that onto screen? Well, you make sure you hire the people who have lived that life.
Right.
So, it started with Jack, who was consulting on the pilot script. Jared Shaw, who had found the manuscript for Chris, plays Boozer. He was also a tech advisor, a co-producer on the show. Ray Mendoza, lead tech advisor, who worked on Lone Survivor. Garrett Golden. We had a former special operator, former Army Ranger, Max Adams, in the room. He's a writer, producer, and shot some second unit as well on this show. And then we had a ton of military veterans actually on camera. Alpha Platoon in the opening is almost entirely former Navy SEALs. Beautiful. And that's why the movement looks so good. Later in the season, there's a hostage rescue team from the FBI. All military veterans are playing those roles as well. So we put a premium on that because, I think I come out of a sports background. Chris does, Antoine, we all really admire that, but nothing drives you crazier as an athlete than to watch a sports film where someone can't throw a ball or catch a ball. Right?
Yeah. No, I get that.
You guys deal with that every action movie that you're watching.
All the time.
People aren't taking the time to get the tradecraft right. And that was a pledge that was made from the very first moments on this show to get that right. So the special operations community and the veteran community would be excited to see that somebody actually took the time.
Right.
Yeah. And they will be, no doubt. So I know we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves in this way, but I got to ask, are there plans to continue this? I know everything is always going to be reliant on how successful it comes across and everything, but are you guys actively planning, thinking about True Believer and so on and so forth going on to the next books? Is that something that's in the works for you guys, or is it just, hold what you got and wait to see what happens?
Well, we would like to.
We would love to. Yeah, I think
I'm all in.
We're in. We're ready to go. Jack has done the work. He's 5 seasons ahead of us right now. Yeah.
He's a beast.
He is a beast, man. It's incredible. The man does not sleep. Yeah. But no, we love the idea of an ongoing series. We have to wait and see what happens. But for now, what I'm saying is, if you love season 1 of the show, go out, buy True Believer. Read that book. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
And it's an epic blueprint for an epic season of TV. Yeah.
God, I hope you guys do it. I love Terminalist. I thought it was a great show, you guys. You really, I think there's so many aspects of it that you guys really nail. Pratt is, I know people say this sounds like hyperbole, but he's a revelation in this, man.
He is.
It really is Pratt taking it to the next level. And
it's a Pratt you've never seen before.
Oh, yeah.
Truly. It really is. And I'm telling the world.
Very good, man. Man. He deserves it, man. He's a good man. He's a hard worker. I love Chris, man. He deserves it. He's a great human being, man.
Yep.
Yeah. And props to you guys too. I mean, you guys really, did some stellar work here, and it's awesome.
Thank you.
Antoine, I want to ask you a question because it's something that Dave brought up early on, and we'll end on this. You mentioned Tony Scott. You mentioned Man on Fire. Yeah. News recently came out for Equalizer 3 is bringing back Dakota Fanning to once again. Was this you, Antoine? Is this a Tony Scott, Antoine Fuqua Equalizer? Perfect.
Man.
How did this happen? I have to know. How did that? Is that?
Well, I think I was talking to Denzel. We were on the phone. We were just talking about it, and Man on Fire came up, talking about Tony. Tony's birthday, I think, was yesterday. I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago. Tony Scott's birthday, I believe it was. And we had talked about the birthday was coming, I believe. And then Dakota came up, and I was like, "How old is Dakota now?" And we're like, "Oh yeah, she's about the right age." And I was like, "That'd be cool to bring her back," So it that's how it sort of happened. Then I met with her.
Yeah.
And it was just, I loved her as soon as I walked in the room and met her. I mean, she's a great actress, but you meet people, she's just she's incredible.
I love it. Antoine, I'm a huge fan. I'm a huge fan of Tony Scott as well. I'm probably he's probably the reason I even do this at this point. Man. But again, I just wanted to say thank you guys for your time. Love the show. Love what you're doing. I can't wait to see more. Season 2, True Believer, please.
Let's go.
Man. Thank you, brother.
Thanks,
Be well, man. Stay healthy.
Have a good one.
See you, man.
I'm not going to tell you again. Stay off my list.
Okay, so that was Antoine and Dave. Hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I'm going to jump right into Jack Carr now because, well, he was awesome. I had 10 minutes with Jack.
Have you read the books?
I read Terminal List. I have not read the other ones. And one thing I will say, and it was something I didn't really get into with any of the guys, was there are differences. And I talked to one of our fans, Jeremy Edwards, is a huge Jack Carr fan, and has read all those books, and was kind of asking me some questions about, like, is this in there? Is that in there? And there are some changes. There are some story changes and some, I don't know about fairly big, but kind of big. But I really felt like it worked out perfectly in the way that they did it and the changes that they made. And Jack Carr does address in this interview, basically that, he was on set and he understood, that things had to be changed and things needed to be changed, but he was a part of the changes. So anybody that has any qualms over, oh man, they just like stole it from Jack Carr and like, completely fucked it up and did all this and that. Like, the author was there and he worked with the screenwriters and everything to craft what the Terminal List became. So love it or hate it, you can rest easy that it was Jack Carr's influence on that. So here is Jack Carr talking about the Terminal List. Paul Shirey, Beard and the Bald podcast. I'm sorry, Jack, my beard is a little shaved down. I feel like I'm misrepresenting at this point.
I'm a little disappointed, I'm not gonna lie, but you're making up for it with the background there. I got, what is that, Die Hard off your left shoulder?
We got Die Hard. I got all the goods. That is solid. I like it. I shaved to the rooster mustache a couple days ago because my son had kind of dared me to do it, and it was hideous. It didn't work. I just missed the full beard. So yeah. I'll be back in your good graces soon, I promise.
All right. We'll have to do this again then.
So Jack, I want to start off with talking about Chris Pratt a little bit here because
never heard of him.
Yeah. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? It's said that I've heard that you wrote the Terminal List with him in mind. Is that factual?
I did. And it was my last year in the SEAL teams in the Navy, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do next, which is write thrillers, the same kind that I've been reading my entire life and loved so much. So the Tom Clancy's and Nelson DeMille's and David Morrell's and AJ Quinnell, J.C. Pollock, Mark Olden, all these guys that wrote characters that typically back then in the 80s and early 90s anyway had Vietnam backgrounds as either Navy SEALs or Army Special Forces or CIA paramilitary or Marine snipers. So I love those books, and my mom is a librarian, so I grew up with books and this love of reading. And I knew after my time in the military that that's what I would do. And so I sat down to write the Terminal List. And as a child of the 80s, it was very natural for me to choose the exact actor that I thought would best portray my character, James Reese. So as I'm typing my first sentences, I thought, yeah, this guy named Chris Pratt, he's in Parks and Rec, but I just saw him in something called Zero Dark 30, where he made this transformation to a SEAL operator. And I thought back to all those Tom Hanks movies in the 80s that were all comedy. And then he takes a risk with Philadelphia in the early 90s, and then he can really write his own ticket. And I thought, who is that actor today who hasn't done something like this, who has all this potential and who's inherently likable on and off screen? That's Chris Pratt. And so he's the only person I ever thought of. And then since I was picking my actor, I figured I might as well pick my director. And so Antoine Fuqua. And
that's awesome.
Like, he's the guy that's going to direct this. And I was just typing away, no connections to Hollywood, no connections to New York publishing. And I picked my publisher, Simon & Schuster. And lo and behold, Simon & Schuster publishes it, Chris Pratt stars, Antoine directs, and we're all executive producers on this thing, bringing it to life.
Dude, you literally like wrote your own ticket, man. Like
crazy.
It's
pretty
awesome.
Wild how that turned out. Yeah. It doesn't happen like that every day.
So, I mean, one thing I have to say, like with Chris Pratt, with this, and I told this to Antoine and Dave when I talked to them yesterday, was it kind of is the death of funny Chris Pratt. It is like the birth of like this action hero, Chris Pratt, very much like what you're saying, how, Tom Hanks took that risk and changed it. To me, and I've been a Chris Pratt fan from all the way back in the Parks and Rec days, and seeing him transform, going into Guardians of the Galaxy and Zero Dark 30, and then into the Jurassic World stuff. This is a totally different role for him, and he nails it. Like, I'm genuinely impressed with his performance in this. And I was like, dude, this is Chris Pratt like you've never, truly people say that all the time, and it sounds like hyperbole, but it's true. Like you've never seen Chris Pratt like this before, which I thought was just amazing.
Oh, people are going to be talking about this performance because it is such a departure from things that he's done, things that he's comfortable doing, like Jurassic World, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Avengers. And as I was typing those first words and choosing Chris Pratt to star in this series, he hadn't yet done any of those things. He hadn't risen to A-list prominence. He was on his way, maybe, but there was no Guardians of the Galaxy, there was no Avengers, there was no Jurassic World. And then as I was writing, as I continued this process, he starts doing those. And even as he's doing those things, I'm thinking he needs to take a risk. He needs to do something different. He's perfect for this role. And
he really is.
He thought the same thing.
Yeah, he really is. So now you're also an executive producer on this show. And you even have a cameo. You're pretty involved in this show all around. But I'm curious, like, how involved were you on the day-to-day, especially in kind of safeguarding the book and its adaptation? How much involvement did you have on that?
Yeah, so I've heard from other authors that Hollywood likes to get rid of the author right away because they don't want the author on set.
It's
They're
true.
saying, you ruined my vision, which
true.
can happen. And it's just an issue. So usually the author is not involved. But in this case, Chris and Antoine want to be involved from the get-go. They introduced me to David DiGilio, the showrunner, in December of 2019. So right after he was hired to do this adaptation and to be the showrunner, and we sat down and we talked, and we've talked every day since, to include this morning. And what an amazing person! We had this trust right from the beginning, and really he mentored me along in this new area of writing called screenwriting, and I learned so much from him. As we went along, but we talked every single day. And what was important to Chris and to Antoine and to Dave was that we keep this rooted in, because there's going to be changes. You're telling a story visually. There's going to be changes, but keep those changes rooted in the foundation of the novel. That dark, gritty, primal, violent nature of the novel. That honest foundation of the novel. Rooted in reality, rooted in that authenticity. Those connections to the battlefield and the feelings and emotions behind the things that we do downrange. And I think we did it. I think we accomplished that goal. I could not be more thrilled.
You guys really did. So I'm a combat veteran. I served OEF, OIF. I was a paratrooper with the 501st. And watching this show, like there's so many tactics, so many TTPs throughout the whole thing where I'm like, dude, like they paid attention. Like this is the real shit. This isn't like some, this isn't Hollywoodized action, which I genuinely appreciated. And, I mean, you're a former SEAL, this stuff, inside and out. And I think how important it is for the viewer, especially, fellow veterans and people that are like out there doing the work, see this stuff, and how important that is. So I'm curious, like on the tactics front, and I know that, there were SEALs involved in as advisors. What was that like for you? Like being on the set and making sure that the TTPs and all of that stuff was done properly. What was that like?
Oh man. Well, first of all, the goal was from Antoine from day one was to have a veteran like you sit down and watch this thing. And at the very least, recognize, hey, these guys did their homework. These guys tried to get it right. Because there's certain things like if you have Chris Pratt as James Reese run across a road in the dark and you show that on screen, it's just a black screen. Like you need to show someone moving. So, you have to have some light in there, that sort of a thing, or have some headlights coming around a turn or that sort of a thing. So there's a couple of things you need to do just because you have to show and tell a story and someone needs to make some movement. But it was like a reunion on set. When I walked on that set for the first time, it was, one, because we had a ton of SEALs on there playing SEAls, guys I deployed with downrange that I knew from the SEAL teams.
That's so cool. So fun.
It was a reunion. I think the COVID police on set were losing their minds because I got there and it's like, hey, what's happening, brother? I haven't seen you since Iraq, that sort of a thing. So it was fantastic. But then what also stood out to me is just how much the whole production resembled a military operation. In that you have Antoine Fuqua up there at the top as the commanding officer, setting that tone for everybody on set. You have Chris down here at the tactical level doing that same thing, but at the tactical level right here to that entire set as well. So those two guys set the tone for the cast and crew for the entire production, which was almost 6 months long. But then you also, just like in the military, you got to feed these 350 people on set. So
oh yeah,
craft food services, just like that Army logistics train, coming in with water and food,
bringing out food and mermites for everybody to eat.
Exactly. A little different, but you're still feeding people. And then
not
you have
quite
your armor.
powdered eggs.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, but then you have the armor. It's just like in a platoon.
Yeah.
Those weapons in and out, checking the serial numbers. As they're done with certain scenes. We have the explosives guy on set, just like we'll have a breacher in the troop or the platoon for breaching doors and structures and that sort of a thing. Well, we had explosions on set, and you have an explosives expert there. You have a mobility guy, just like we do in the team. Like, how are you getting from point A to point B? What vehicles are we taking? Who's in charge of that? Are they gassed up? All that sort of a thing. Well, that's someone's responsibility to SEAL team, and it's someone's responsibility on set to make sure those vehicles are where they need to be, the right vehicles in the right place at the right time with the window or the door. It's just how it was when you're filming the last scene. So there are so many similarities between between my time in the military and when I walked on that set. It really stood out. And what also stood out was how good everyone was at their jobs. In a production like this, everybody is at the top of their game, and they focus on one specific thing. And now I see why people say, hey, in Hollywood, you can't have somebody whose job is X doing Y. And
very specific.
Very specific. And they're so good at it, because this thing is a race car and it is flying down the track over 200 miles an hour. And if someone doesn't pay attention to what they're doing and goes over here to do this other thing, well, then that car can go off the rails. So now I see why that is the case. And I was so impressed with how good everyone was at their job.
Awesome. Jack, thanks so much for your time. I could talk to you all day. Unfortunately, that's it for us, but I really appreciate it. I love the show, man. It's awesome. I'm hoping for True Believer next. I'm waiting in the wings, man. So congratulations on the show. And honestly, thanks for being there and for making sure that it came out the way it did. So appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Hopefully I'll see you again soon with the beard.
Right. Yeah, right. Cheers, Jack. Thank you.
See you.
I think something happened to me on that auto.
And that's it. That is our Terminal List interviews. I hope you guys enjoyed them. I had a blast doing them, and I love talking to those guys, and I love the show. I really, really, really hope that it gets another season. It's going to be interesting to see how people react to the show, I think.
It's interesting because I thought it was set up as a limited series.
I mean, it's an 8-episode series based on Terminal List. So it doesn't, there's no guarantee. Just as in the interviews, I said, like, hey, you guys doing True Believer next? And
because I heard it ended with a pretty big cliffhanger.
I think it ends on, without spoiling it, I mean, it ends pretty much like end of a Jack Reacher novel, kind of like, and the adventure continues, or, kind of like Indiana Jones or something like that. Is very much how it kind of closes out. Because James Reese, the character, is featured in all of the follow-on books. So there's definitely more story to be told from James Reese. And a lot of people are really big fans of the next book in the series, True Believer, which I have not read yet. But that's actually there's a lot of excitement to tell that story, which I haven't read, so I can't say whether that's merited or not. But I can say that what I really like about the Terminal List is it's very different from anything else that's out there, but it's also an ode to some of the older, like, cooler shit. It's got an edge to it, and that it's, there were definitely parts when I was watching the show, I was like, oh shit, like, damn. And what I liked about James Reese too, is there's parts in the show where I'm like, I don't know that I necessarily agree with James. He might be going too far. It might be too violent. This might not be the best response, but I like that, he was somebody that was unflinching in what he was doing. So I appreciate that. If you get a chance to watch it, I'll look forward to hearing what you have to say about it too.
What people have had a lot to say about Chris Pratt's movie list to watch with his son. It's so ridiculous.
Which is, I'm going to tell you my story about how
showing them R-rated movies. Give me a break.
So I listened to the Smart List podcast. And I listened to the episode with Chris Pratt. I listened to him.
I'm sure that most people criticizing it haven't actually done.
Right. So, I mean, I listened to the podcast, and Chris Pratt, to give you everybody context, he's talking about how he's this summer, he's going to take his son, Jack, to go and do this camping trip. His son is 9 and might be 10 by that point. And it's talking about how he's going to take his son to go see, to go on this camping trip, and it's going to be like 10 days. And he's like, I'm going to do 10 days, 10 movies, and we're going to camp and we're going to do all this other stuff. And it's like this great father-son bonding thing that he's planning, right? That he's really looking forward to. And Will Arnett asks him, he's like, all right, so what are the movies? What are the movies? And so Chris Pratt's like, Rambo First Blood, Dumb and Dumber, White Fang with Ethan Hawke, Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Rudy, Toy Soldiers. I'm sure you remember Toy Soldiers.
Of course, yeah, Sean Astin.
Red Dawn, Bloodsport, Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and Monty Python and the Hidden Grail.
I mean, to me, there's nothing that a kid that age that I wouldn't have watched at that point anyway. I mean, I watched movies like that when I was younger, and it really depends on the kid. If the kid is mature enough to take it, and there's nothing wrong with showing them an R-rated movie. I mean, it's parental guidance. That's the thing. And, people are so, I don't know. I mean, they all just want to hate Chris Pratt. That's the thing.
But like, why?
Yeah.
That's really my question. And even James
Christian, and they hate it's bullshit. It's just, they have all these.
James Gunn is like, somebody was like, can we recast? And I'm sure we talked about this on the show. It's like, can we recast Chris Pratt? And James Gunn was like, what the fuck are you talking about? He's like, if Chris Pratt goes, we all go. Yeah. He's like, what? Because he goes to a church? Do you even know anything about the church?
Exactly. Do you know anything about his politics? Do you know about what he believes? All these people are making assumptions. They have no idea.
They really don't. And Chris Pratt does not post he doesn't post like right-wing shit or anything. He doesn't post anything like that.
No, not at all. He doesn't.
Just like, I own a farm. I hunt. I fish. I star in movies. I has a lot of respect for the veteran community, and
people just need to shut the fuck up, honestly.
But my thing is, it's very obvious that the people that would make a stink about this, which they did, it's all people cut from a very similar cloth, and they're really just trying to hate on Chris Pratt.
Of course they
are. Do they really believe? Does anybody truly believe that an R-rated movie for a 9 or 10-year-old is somehow going to disrupt them or psychologically traumatize them in some way that they cannot function in this world? Like seriously, what is it about a 9 or 10-year-old child seeing an R-rated movie that is somehow going to ruin them for life? What is it? It's the same thing that goes back to video games. Has it ever been scientifically proven that a video game has somehow disrupted somebody?
It's just stupid, and it's just very typical. It's typical bullshit.
It's very pathetic, and it brings up too, like, even to me, like, brings up the MPA. Like, I think the MPA serves a function.
They're guidelines. They're not the end all be all. You can decide what's appropriate for you, and you can decide what's appropriate for your family.
Exactly, and you just said the key word there. It's a guideline, not a mandate. So you have options here. I mean, have people been arrested for taking their child to an R-rated movie?
No, because it's not illegal, dude. It's fine. It is what it is. And I watched a ton of R-rated movies when I was a kid, and I turned out okay.
I've been to R-rated movies where people brought their fucking babies that were crying at the time. That was more annoying to me than them bringing a child, like, for the content. I was like, dude, take your kid home. They need to go to bed. It wasn't a question of like, oh my God, they're going to be exposed to this. Like, they were babies, for one. They're not even cognizant of what's happening. But I find the pearl clutching over ratings, when people use them as like this convenient thing to try and take somebody down, it's the biggest L you could ever take.
The thing is, honestly, you cannot outthink people who aren't thinking. You can't.
I love that. Look at that Chris with dropping wisdom bombs.
You can't.
You can't do it.
What else would you like to talk about?
Well, you started off mentioning you saw Elvis. I also saw Elvis. What did you think?
I actually really liked it. I mean, it's wacky. Like, it really is. Like, it's Baz Luhrmann dialed up to like 1,000. And I'm not always a Baz Luhrmann fan. I mean, I like Romeo and Juliet. I like Moulin Rouge. Don't particularly like Australia. And I lasted one episode in the Get Down. And I wasn't even a big fan of Great Gatsby, but I liked Elvis quite a bit. And I mean, there were things about it that kind of, at first, I didn't think I was necessarily going to like it. I mean, I thought Hanks was hilarious, but like, I don't know that it was a historically accurate portrayal of Colonel Tom Parker, because he plays him like Gollum. Like, it was just an over the top fantasy performance. But As soon as Austin Butler came in as Elvis, I believed that he was Elvis, right? He totally won me over.
Good. He's
I
so
thought,
good.
yeah, I thought his performance was amazing, and like he needs to be remembered when it comes to Oscar time this year, because that was uncanny, and it got so much, like I was in the hotel room, and then after later on, I put on an Elvis movie in the background because I was curious to watch like Elvis's mannerisms and see like how good he got it, and he got it really good. My big complaint with Elvis was that I wish it had been longer, because they and apparently there is a 4-hour cut of the movie that he's not planning on releasing anytime soon. He's re-releasing Australia apparently as a 6-episode series for Hulu called Faraway Downs, which I'm not crazy about. But he apparently shot a lot more of Elvis to be used in the future at some date, but years away. And you could see where that would happen, because there is a period of time that's totally glossed over.
The end.
I think the 60s, when he marries Priscilla, they kind of just zoom through it like they do that musical number, and they kind of go through it really fast, right?
Well,
and
they don't spend any real time in his last years in decline.
No. They
one
don't.
Scene of Austin Butler in a fat suit, and that's the very last song that he sings when he sings Unchained Melody. That is,
and then they cut to the actual Elvis, and I think that is, for me, that's always a mistake when they do that, because I find it breaks the illusion, and I never really liked it when they did that. I think they should have left it as him throughout the whole movie.
I sometimes like it, sometimes don't. I'm kind of hot and cold.
I would have liked to have seen the rest of the story. I don't even know if that was shot though. I don't think Elvis's family would have necessarily ever. I don't think you're going to see Elvis die on the toilet, have a heart attack.
I don't think anybody wants to see that, and they end the movie on Unchained Melody, which was a performance he did just before 6 weeks before he died.
Yeah,
you can actually watch it on YouTube.
Yeah, and it showed that he still was great.
Right, like he's like suffering from like so many ailments, and he's so fucked up. And then, he's got to have somebody hold the microphone for him while he's sitting there singing, and he sings his fucking heart out. And
he's still able to overcome. That's the thing. And and
you're just like, that's where the beauty and magic of Elvis comes from. You're like, this tragic story actually has this kind of silver lining in there where it's like, God damn.
He's always able to transcend, and I mean, they could have gotten more into like his hardcore drug habit, which I think they evoked pretty well in the movie though. And
they do, they just don't show. It's Bohemian Rhapsody to a certain degree.
I thought that they got more better. I think they got way more into it with this one.
They did, and I feel like they handled it much more. But it's
decline and how kind of doomed he was towards the end, and how he was, and I think that they did evoke that quite well. I actually didn't really have any big complaints about the last chapter of the film. It was just, I think that the 60s, his Hollywood career was totally kind of glossed over. And the thing is, he was one of the biggest movie stars in the world too for 10 years. And I feel like they didn't really spend any time on that, which kind of like was a little bit disappointing, just because I think that you can't really talk about Elvis's effect on the pop culture without the fact that he was such a huge movie star, to like #1 at the box office for quite a while.
Well, I think they showed it, but it was like there wasn't much drama to it. I mean, he was sleeping with his co-stars and stuff like that, but that's about as far as the drama.
I think that if you went to see that movie, you would think that Elvis was in a couple of movies. You wouldn't have thought necessarily that he was a huge star in films. You would think that, he just experimented a little bit with Hollywood and boom, that was it. But it was really a big thing for him, and he really did try to be a great actor. And his early movies, he was very promising in them, and he's great in this movie, Flaming Star. And then he just kind of got shoehorned into all these garbage movies, and it was something that tortured.
Thanks to the Colonel.
Yeah, well, it was something that tortured him too, because he knew how bad they were, and it was, anyway. But overall, though, I actually really liked it. You?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I actually liked it way more than I thought I would. I'd even go as far as to say that I loved it. Which I did not anticipate. What I anticipated was just kind of a crazy, flashy Baz Luhrmann wild movie. And I got that. But then at the same time, I also found myself really connecting with the character. I don't really know that much about Elvis. I'm like a fucking expert now because I've written a ton of articles on it at this point. But I didn't really know that much about Elvis, to be quite honest. I knew some of his music and I knew kind of basic level shit, but I thought it was really interesting. And to see that story presented in that way, it felt more like a fable. It felt like an Elvis fable, not so much a
Yeah,
biopic.
it's not really realism. I mean, they don't go into the fact that Priscilla was 14 when they got together,
Right. Yeah.
They don't
Yeah,
go
yeah,
in. They do not address any of that. But but like you said, it is the fable. It's like the expression, print the legend, and that was the legend.
yeah. But I like that aspect of it. I don't think every biopic has to be like Oliver Stone's The Doors.
No.
You don't have to see every little horrible thing. I don't need to see Elvis trying to take a shit and then falling over on his face and dying.
I mean, if Oliver Stone had directed Elvis, you would have seen that.
Yeah, but why do I need to see, do any of us need to see that? It's kind of like, who among us are dying, in some brave, gorgeous manner? Like, death is ugly. Like, you're gonna die in a bed, you're gonna die in like some horrific way. Like, why do we need to see that part?
He said in an interview that I saw with him that he was planning on making his version of a superhero movie, and Elvis was his superhero, and that really is what it is.
And it's interesting you say that, because I'm actually working on something now which ties into his whole connection to Captain Marvel Jr. and Shazam, and it mirrors so much of Elvis's journey, down to his taking care of business logo, which is the lightning bolt, the same thing as Shazam and Captain Marvel Jr., down to his hairstyle, which kind of like, he put shoe polish in his hair because he actually was a natural, they said he was a natural blonde as a kid, but then he had like kind of, sandy brown hair as he got older, and he used shoe polish to make his hair black.
It was like Tony Curtis. He was
Tony Curtis. That was another influence there. But he like down to him wearing like the little mini capes and shit like that. Like, there's a lot of connections to this kind of comic book journey. And even Colonel Parker, as in the comics for Captain Marvel Jr., Shazam says Shazam, but Captain Marvel Jr. says Captain Marvel to turn into the superhero. So you have Colonel Parker, which is like this weird kind of like, coincidental yet somewhat fateful thing, this fateful connection where it's like he says Colonel Parker, and Colonel Parker shows up and like takes care of whatever, gives him his superpowers, if you will. I think there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot of stuff that's very, very interesting. And with Baz making it that way, I think that it does kind of create this superhero-like journey for Elvis, which I think is great. And apparently audiences think it's great too. It did really well at the box office.
Yeah, I kind of wish it had done better though, because it's kind of a bummer to me that as much as I love Top Gun, that Top Gun's beating it in week 5.
People love that Top Gun, bro. It's sure like the next Titanic.
I think the big mistake though with WB is that I always know that it's going to show up on HBO Max in 6 weeks. So. Like as much as I liked it, I won't go see it again because I know I'm going to be able to see it on HBO Max in 6 weeks.
I wouldn't mind seeing it again. They have it in ScreenX at Regal. So here's an interesting story. So my son comes back today because I do alternating weeks with him. And I said, hey, we're going to go to the movies tonight. I said, and he's like, well, what are we seeing? And I was like, okay, well, we could see Elvis and ScreenX. We can see the Black Phone because I still haven't seen Black Phone.
Great
or they actually have a Fathom event screening for The Fifth Element tonight.
I saw.
And he's like, bro, Fifth Element. He's like, I don't want to miss that in the theater. And I was like, all right. And I was kind of proud because I'm like, that's pretty fucking cool.
I was actually considering going to see it tonight here in LA myself, to be honest.
You should go. Regal's got it tonight, so you should go.
My thing about Fathom is I was scared away by that story, though, that was written about The Thing, like about how they're showing it the wrong aspect ratio and they use satellite, instead of DCP.
Yeah. And that's how I saw The Thing as well. I was going to talk about that later. And that is how they're projecting it via satellite.
That sucks. I heard it.
And I know that because when I was sitting in the theater and the screen popped up and you see that's all of their movies. And it was a bunch of links. It's like they had like projected the computer screen and I saw every link, the G.I. Joe, the movie, all the stuff that was coming up for Fathom events. It was all like, basically they were like clicking a file from a satellite and playing it via satellite.
I don't know if I'm going to go then. I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark is also playing in 35 tonight at the Academy Museum. Although I've seen that 35 print a few times, and I've seen Fifth Element on the big screen because I saw it when it first came out, and I feel like I'm going to see it now. If I see it like the satellite, it's going to look like like not great. Unfortunately,
The Thing did look that way, and like I was a little disappointed in that. Like, why can we not play an actual print?
Yeah.
That was a little disappointing.
At least the DCP. That's what they do in Montreal when they
something.
Like,
but
I saw both not long ago.
You
And
saw
they
what?
always Bullet, the Steve McQueen
Oh.
movie. And they always do. They do the classic film series in Montreal for Cineplex, which is our big distributor, and they always use DCPs, so it looks great. You know, so that's it. So it looks as good as it's going to look. You know, as good as a new movie would look. You know, so that's kind of, you know, so that for me, that's like
that would make a difference. I would love to see more of that. I mean, it's the film community in LA as far as like projecting that, and it's, you know, I know that that's in your area too. In the larger community areas are going to do that. You know, I'm out in bumfuck Alaska, so
I saw, anyway, speaking of Prince, I saw last Sunday, I saw The Spy Who Loved Me on 35mm at the Academy.
oh yeah, you talked about that last week. That's awesome.
Yeah, and that was very impressive. That was very cool.
I would totally go see Raiders in 35. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Anyways, I really enjoyed Elvis. I actually can't wait to watch it again. I don't know if I'll see it in theaters, but I will absolutely watch Elvis again. If anything, just to watch Austin Butler's performance. I thought he was fucking amazing.
Yeah, he was great. And I'm excited to see him play in the role that Sting played in Dune.
Yeah, Fade Routha. Like, I was just gonna say that too. Like that, it really made me like, you know, take notice of this guy. I'm really interested to see where his career goes. It kind of reminds me of like a younger Taylor Kitsch in that way. Like he's got that kind of vibe to him. So who knows? I may be interesting to see where he goes in his career. So, but thus far it's pretty cool. So there you go. You have fucking 2 thumbs up from fucking Beard and the Bald for Elvis. If you need a recommendation, I do recommend going to see it in the theater. I agree with Chris that, like, you know, it's kind of, I don't know, it can be dissuading when it's like, oh, well, it's just going to be on HBO, I'll just wait. But I think it's absolutely worth seeing in a theater. I saw it on a preview night on Tuesday, and I didn't even realize it was coming out. I just happened to look on Fandango and saw that it was playing as like a fan event. And I was like, fuck, I'll just go, man. So I can go see it early. And there was like Elvis fans there. There was like people that were like really fucking excited. And it was pretty fun to watch it with them because they were like super fucking into it. So it's fun to watch. I love watching movies with people when they're into shit. Like that is just makes it an exciting experience. It's just fun. It's fun. So Chris, I know that you've seen all of The Boys on Amazon Prime this new season. I just watched Herogasm yesterday.
Yeah, I liked it, but I was underwhelmed by it from everything that people have told me about Herogasm. I was expecting it to be way crazier. And the fact that it was only kind of the last half hour. And
yeah,
I didn't think it was that crazy because I thought the craziest scene that we've seen so far was the first episode where the guy goes into the pee hole, you know?
Right? Like that was more Herogasm inspired. I mean, they did have a guy like pop out of a woman's vagina and then
you have the penis going around the corners and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that was cool. I mean, I liked it. I thought it was a good episode. I don't think that it was as completely outrageous though, as everybody was saying.
I thought it was a good episode, but not because of Herogasm. Herogasm actually had nothing to do with it. And I feel like they changed it drastically from the comics. Which I thought was kind of a miss in that way. And I know that they've been changing things, frequently, which is fine. The show is still great on its own. It really is a great show. But yeah, the Herogasm thing was like just so amped up in terms of like, oh my God, like it's going to be so crazy. And like the cast and crew are scarred for life and all this other stuff. And I'm watching the episode, waiting for these moments, right? I'm like, when is this going to happen? I was like, this is like tame as shit. Yeah, like, what did they think they were filming exactly? Like it just really was not. It was not the Herogasm they thought it was.
That said, I mean, I really like Jensen Ackles as Soldier Boy, and I've never seen him before. Like I never watched Supernatural, so I thought he was pretty good.
Yeah, I never watched Supernatural myself, but I do think he's pretty cool as Soldier Boy. I don't know how it's going to pan out in the rest of the season. You do, but I do not. But I'm interested to see where that goes. I really like Jensen Ackles though. I think he's be nice to see him take on some stuff outside of this. Maybe this will lead to some better opportunities. But he's an interesting actor to watch, and I think he plays up this kind of douchey Captain America character pretty well. I think it's pretty fun. And again, very different from the comics, because in the comics, Soldier Boy's kind of a pussy. Like he's like like really pathetic and sad, and there's like some fucked up shit that happens between him and Homelander that's pretty fucked up. But yeah, he's very, very different in the show, but it's still pretty cool. So I'm into it. I like The Boys. I'm very curious to see. I feel like they're getting close to an end game though, because
I think you'll see in the finale, they're setting up like a pretty clear end game. You'll see.
Yeah, I feel like and Homelander's become so. I'm sorry, say that again.
They almost set like kind of a timeline on it. You'll see.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, Homelander's gotten to a point where it's like, how much further is he gonna go here before someone's gonna have to take action? And that's similar to the comic as well. But yeah, I really enjoyed the Hero Guys. I like the part with where A-Train takes out fucking what's his name, Blue Hawk?
Yeah, the racist guy, Blue
Falcon, I think it is, or something like that.
Yeah,
Blue Falcon is actually a military term for buddy fucker. So, and we say that like when you fuck somebody over, like you like screw, like you tell on them, or you screw somebody over, like you fucking Blue Falcon.
Interesting.
So let's see here. One thing that I thought was really cool, I'm sure you do too, as a fan, but the Furiosa synopsis was put out, which gave a clearer picture in terms of like what the movie is going to be, which apparently will focus on Furiosa being kidnapped early on from the what is it, the Green Land of Green Mothers or whatever, by a biker gang. And it looks like what's his name? My fucking brain's not Hemsworth, the bad guy.
Tom Burke.
Tom Burke will be playing what's his name? My brain's not working.
The Mentor, I think. I think that Hemsworth is going to be playing.
I think Hemsworth is going to be the Dementor dude.
Really, I think he's
Dr. Demento.
I think he's going to be playing. God, I'm blanking on his memory.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing.
Morton Joe. I think he's going to be a Morton Joe.
You think so? I feel like Tom Burke is going to be a Morton Joe.
Oh no, I feel like
Hemsworth is going to be
no, because the thing is, Tom Burke is playing the role that Yahya Abdul-Mateen was going to play. That's the thing. He was Yahya Abdul-Mateen's replacement, and they're not going to cast Yahya Abdul-Mateen as a Morton Joe now, are they? So
I don't know. I mean, you're right. That's a good point.
I'm pretty sure Hemsworth is a Morton Joe. Think about it.
Well, if anything, we know this now is that Immortan Joe absolutely is in this movie and will play a big role.
Oh yeah.
So I think there's whether it's Hemsworth or Burke, however that's going to work.
Think about it though. Like you want a guy that's huge and muscular. It's going to be Hemsworth. Burke is not necessarily a muscular guy. It's going to be.
See, I'm not really familiar with Tom Burke, so I don't know.
He's like a British guy. Like he looks kind of like a Mel Gibson type almost. You know, like it's funny. Like he seems like almost like the guy they would cast if you were replacing Tom Hardy or something. It's really I'm sure that Hemsworth is playing a Morton Joe. I'm almost positive.
I think that would be fucking cool if he is.
Yeah.
To be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, he knows. Miller knows that that's what people want, and I'm sure that's what it's going to be.
Another aspect to that, with Dr. Dementa. What the fuck is it? Hang on. Dementus. I keep fucking it up. I keep saying Dr. Demento. Warlord Dementus, which is like a biker gang, a biker horde, as it's put out. But anyways, what I like about the story aspect that's revealed, that it's basically going to be like a tyrant's war for dominance, which is going to be Dementus versus Immortan Joe and his group, and then with Furiosa caught in between, leading up to probably how she loses her arm. Because if you remember in Fury Road, she's like, oh, she lost her arm in a big battle. And I think it's going to be a thing where she's playing both sides to some degree, and then ends up on Immortan Joe's team in the end. But I think it's going to be fucking cool, man. Like the more I hear about this movie, the more excited I get. And the fact that it's actually happening, because it took so long for Mad Max Fury Road to finally get greenlit, then made, then released. It was just kind of like, dude, that's probably it for George Miller. And here he is, like behind the camera on this, 73 years old, and cranking out Furiosa, it gets me. I'm fucking excited. This is definitely a project I'm really looking forward to seeing what they do, because I mean, there's no other filmmaker like Miller out there. You know, he's very much got his own distinct.
Well, and it's going to be a lot of practical stuff too. That's the thing about him, right? So
yeah, which is amazing. You know, fuck, it's like you just want to like preserve this guy for as long as possible.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But what makes me curious,
directing movies like a Morton Joe with the thing.
Yeah, it's like got to put on his plastic suit and his fucking breathing apparatus. Hey, whatever it takes, get out there and direct.
Yeah.
But it makes me think about like, what does the future of Mad Max look like? You know, like
I don't know that there is one. Like the thing is, as much as he left it open. I mean, if you read that book, it clearly he hated working with Hardy and Theron. He hated the two of them. I don't think you're going to see either of them again. Mm-hmm. Like I think both of them have come around, and I think they both realized that they were making an amazing movie. I don't think they liked working with him. I think that I'm sure he's difficult at times in his own way. I think he follows his own, the thing is, when George Miller did Fury Road, I can kind of understand how they might be wary of him. Like if you look at, his track record, he did Mad Max and The Road Warrior, which are great movies. But then, what else did he do in the intervening years? Which is Eastwick. Yeah, fair enough. Good movie. I don't know if I'd say it's a classic.
Big in the City.
Well, that was what he was known for, though. He was known for stuff like that, and
then he did one of those Penguin animated movies.
Happy Feet. Like I could see how people might be wary of that, and Justice League didn't get off the ground, and I imagine
he did Fury Road, which is just
that came out of nowhere. And I imagine that they probably were making it, and they probably thought he was like, what is he even doing?
Yeah,
and they probably just didn't have the faith in him that they should have had. And then it came out and it was fucking incredible, and it changed both their careers, and I think Hardy in particular, I think was a pain in the fucking ass from day one.
I don't have any trouble believing that whatsoever.
Yeah. So I think he's over it. And I think he wanted to do his own thing with a cast that's going to have faith in it, like start over again,
Yeah. And it's interesting too, to even think that like Theron would have been a pain in the ass, but maybe she was.
Her career was very different back then though. She wasn't experienced in action movies either. I think she wouldn't be now. But she was also like 10 years younger and probably wasn't, it was, there's a maturity thing that happens between 35 and 45. That's for sure.
Sure. For sure.
And it was probably at a very different stage in her career. Her career wasn't that hot when she played Furiosa. So she probably had a bit of a chip on her shoulder about the fact this what's his face, Tom Hardy's coming along. And he's like, is he the lead? Is she the lead? Is she second banana to him? Is he second banana to her? And I think that he probably felt the same way about her, and I think that
which is interesting because in the opening credits, they're both billed equally.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's probably what was happening with that movie. I think there was probably a lot of ego, and he probably wasn't communicating with them. He was probably doing his own fucking thing. And he was like, just have faith in me. I know what I'm doing. And he did in the end, he really did. So there you go.
And I think at this point, Miller has won faith. Yeah. He has won faith based on Fury Road, which made good money. It wasn't $1 billion earner, but it won 6 Oscars.
Yeah, I mean that's why he's got this going. It's considered a classic, and it's Furiosa will do very well, and I don't even think they're necessarily even making it to make money. I think it's the fact that it's artistically important and it could be a huge film, even in terms of like Oscars. Yeah. So.
Well, and with Anya Taylor-Joy, she's made a name for herself thus far. She's a recognizable face,
and working with uncompromising directors. So clearly, there's something about her that she's very good with, serving
with auteurs rather than
she does work with auteurs,
malleable studio people. So
no, I would imagine it would be hard for her to work with a studio person. Like she works with Robert Eggers and Edgar Wright and. And it was, and I think that's the thing. I think she's used to serving the art, of the film, and I think
I agree.
Why, and I'm sure that's why he took her, why he got her, and I'm sure that she is a boost to him, and somebody that's going to be along for the ride and will do what he asks and will do a great job.
And I think having Hemsworth is, that's like a secret weapon in there.
Well, he needed a name, and I think that Hemsworth is a great name, and probably
he's perfect. He's an Australian, so it's like they have that connection going.
And if he gets to play the villain, like God, he's gonna
have some fun. Yeah,
yeah, he'll be great. Yeah,
I'm sure he's having fun with Thor, and the reviews for Thor, Love and Thunder are of course great. as to be expected. But Hemsworth brings a tidal wave with him. Yeah. So whatever he's in at this point, if Hemsworth is in it, is going to serve that project well. Whether the project is good or not is anyone's guess. But like him,
you saw Spiderhead, right?
I did. I watched it. I actually watched it with my wife. We watched it. She's in Utah and I'm here. Yeah. We watched it together on the phone. And
I mean, that's another one though, where he got to kind of, chew scenery and try something a little different. And I thought he was good in it.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was like kind of hard watching Miles Teller beat him up towards the end.
Well, he's not I mean, they don't really fight though. It's not really a fight at the end. I didn't think it was really a fight.
Which is one of the problems I had, but we'll talk about that here in a minute. I did have some issues with Spiderhead. So anyways, as for Furiosa, I'm very excited for it. I just can't believe it's actually happening because it is.
Well, it's going to take a while to come out too. I mean, it took Fury Road 4 years to come out. So we're going to be waiting for Furiosa for a while.
Well, and this isn't scheduled till what? Till 2024. So
yeah,
they're like, I feel like Warner Brothers was like, all right, we're going to let you make this movie.
2024 with an asterisk. Because
we're pushing it out. Well, originally it was 2023. And then they were like, all right, we're pushing.
Yeah, well, I mean, Fury Road was supposed to be, they kept pushing that too. I mean, it took them 3 years to make it. So there you go.
Well, and the thing is too, like, let's say the production goes swimmingly, they can always move it up. Sure. It's not unheard of. Like movies get moved up and back all the time. So you just never know. So there was an interesting interview this week from Brad Pitt, who was talking about how he feels he's kind of on the last legs of his career
as an actor.
So he's called it like the last semester or trimester of his career. And I think a lot of people took it as like, oh, Brad Pitt's talking about retiring, but he didn't put a time limit on how long this would last. You know what I'm saying? But thing is, like, Brad Pitt's in his 50s now, and
late 50s.
He kind of is in that aspect of his career, to decide what it's going to be. So I really don't think it's quite as controversial as it was taken.
No, I mean, the way I see it is that, he's probably going to take a step back from acting and just do the roles that are important to him at some point. I mean, Sandra Bullock just did the same thing this week and it was one of our top performing stories. She just had a hit and then she's like, great, I'm taking some time, because she's getting to that point now. She's older and she just and she's in Bullet Train as well. Yeah. And it's just one of those things where they're like, I think you get to a certain point in your career and certain things become more important to you, and it's a bear, putting together a movie like that, especially when you're producing it and you're doing a real physical performance. I mean, Bullet Train, he probably had to train hard for that movie, and he produced it too. But the thing about Brad Pitt that people often forget though is how prolific he is as a producer through
He really is. I know, yeah, he really is.
Because his partner's dead, Brad Gray's dead, but he's still putting these movies out, and he's really considered like one of the great kingmakers in Hollywood, where he plucks these directors, he gets stuff done. And he is, as a producer, he's as strong a producer as anybody I can think of. I often think of Brad Pitt very similar to Robert Redford in that way, where he's a guy that was celebrated for his looks and did a lot of cool movies, but really gave back to the art, like Redford did with Sundance. And I think that Pitt does the same thing with his producing. And I could see him moving more in that direction. If ever we're going to have an actor that does something like a Sundance, it'll be Pitt.
I think that's actually a really cool, I don't know, thing to consider even, like a lot of these actors in our generation, within guys that are 10, 20 years older than us, are starting to hit that kind of that end of their Hollywood career. But I think we'll start seeing more of stuff like that, but I think that's an interesting thing to think about.
And if you think about Redford too, I mean, he did quasi-retire as an actor, but he came back now and then if something came, if there's something in and out. And that would be what I would expect from somebody like Pitt, that he would dip
some of that Marvel money.
Yeah, he would, something came up that he couldn't resist. I'm sure he'd do it.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm very excited to see him in Bullet Train. He's got the Joseph Kosinski race movie, and then he's got the spy movie with George Clooney. And it sounds like these are big movies with big physical performances. So I would imagine,
and that's a thing with Brad Pitt too. Brad Pitt's never gone the action route. He's done a few movies that have had action in them, but he's never even attempted to be a big.
At least this one and the F1 movie are going to be huge undertakings for him, because they said the F1 thing, it's going to be like Top Gun when they're actually
cameras in the cars, and I'm sure Brad Pitt will be driving.
So those are going to be big undertakings.
Kaczynski is going to be a tough one to work with. It's going to be like, well, Tom Cruise would do it.
And that's the thing. He's going to have no choice, and but I think he's up to the challenge, though. That's the thing.
I think so too. And an interesting thing too about, someone like Brad Pitt, right, is that, he's built enough clout throughout his career, and he's done enough that it's like, in many ways, he can kind of write his own ticket. And it's like, if you're going to write your own ticket, what are you going to write it for? Like, dude, doing a Formula One racing movie with Joseph Kosinski and Jerry Bruckheimer is that's a big endeavor, but not everybody can write that kind of ticket as an actor, So why not use that clout that you have and do that for your last part of your career?
And people don't know what else is coming too. Like he's got Babylon coming, the Damien Chazelle movie. And I saw footage of it at CinemaCon, and it looks amazing. And it's a very different role for him.
There's been some reviews for it that have come out saying that it's amazing.
3-hour movie and like hardcore R-rated and like an epic. And he's playing this guy. I think he's playing a kind of a variation on John Gilbert, who was, if you know Hollywood history, he was basically the biggest silent star, huge. And he just was like, he rubbed people the wrong way. Right. And then what happened was, when they went over to the talkies, the studio head, who fucking hated him, saw a way to get even with him and fucked with the levels of his first movie that he was doing. He had a fine voice. His voice was normal, but he fucked with the levels to give him like kind of this high-pitched sound, and instructed him to act a different way. Like how in the silent movie, they'll be like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. Like he really was like, oh, you need to do what you do in silence. Whereas all these other people that came from the stage that were successful afterwards, like, no, this is how you actually act, but he was a movie actor. He wasn't a stage actor. So he had all these terrible instincts, and then they fucked with the pitch of his voice to make him sound high pitched. And that was it. That movie came out and he was finished, and it was over. And then it was drugs, and then it was gambling, and then it was dead at 35.
Damn.
But he looked like he was about 60. Over. Over. I mean, the artist is pretty much about that, but at least in The Artist, it has a happy ending, and it's because he's French, and stuff like that. But it's he's French. Like the French. But it has a happy ending. But I think Babylon, it's the same thing. Like I think Margot Robbie's playing Clara Bow, who also kind of went nuts, and ended up being a recluse afterwards. Like, this is not going to be a happy movie. These people did not have happy endings, because they were these huge silent icons that as soon as, and it wasn't even the voices, it was the style of acting, because the style of acting was different. So the ones that came in that were really popular were British stage actors that really knew their shit, or had or the American stage actors that had that kind of mid-Atlantic thing going because it registered better when it was recorded, or the ones that went the complete opposite direction, like James Cagney, who had never been in a silent movie. So he didn't care for what anybody else was doing, so they let him do what he wanted, and he had this real, affected speech that nobody had ever heard before, and it was so cool, and then everybody copied him, and it was one of those things you had to go. You had to go really extreme and stylized, and I think that it worked very well for him, but it was in the silence, it was just not this. Very few of them actually carried over to sound,
Yeah,
it'll be a very interesting movie, I think.
But Chazelle is such a fascinating filmmaker.
And the thing is, they were also all fucking hardcore drug addicts too, because like the stuff they were doing in the 20s during Prohibition, they were off. That you could do anything you wanted in Hollywood, anything, because it was a small little fucking colony in the middle of nowhere. Back then, it's not like it is now. They were left to their own fucking devices, and it was like Sodom and Gomorrah, really. Like, it was, they could do whatever the fuck they wanted, orgies, all kinds of shit. I mean, that's what happened to Fatty Arbuckle, that was the kind of thing. It was unbelievable what they would get into, the shit they would get up to. And the movie is going to be about that, and it's going to be like, it's going to be nuts.
There needs to be more orgies in like the film journalism community.
It's gonna be that movie's gonna be Herogasm for real.
Oh fuck. Well, I'm looking forward to it. I love Chazelle's work. I didn't love First Man as much.
I respected it more than liked it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. But I did obviously love Whiplash, and I actually love La La Land too. So I'm down with either. I'm down with those. So I really look forward to seeing what he does next with Babylon. So it'd be good shit. Anyways, I don't think Brad Pitt's done by a mile. I think he's got quite a bit to offer still. And I look forward to seeing what this next evolution of his career is. And I think it's great that he's taking these bigger swings. You know, a lot of times you get to this point, you're kind of like, I'm just gonna hang it up. He's like, nah, I'll just go ahead and fucking shoot for the heavens. So anyways, now is one of my favorite times of the show, which is what we're watching. I think I started last week, Chris. So
very easy. I really didn't have time because I was at VidCon.
I think you're working the whole time, getting drunk the whole time.
I didn't watch any movies. I watched Elvis, and that was it. And I went Spy Who Loved Me in 35mm last week.
I tried to be nice and let you go first, but you didn't watch it.
So I really have nothing to talk about.
So I saw The Thing last week, and we talked briefly about that already. I took my son to see it because it's the 40th anniversary of The Thing, and I still I absolutely love The Thing. Yeah. It's one of my favorite horror sci-fi movies ever made. I will say though, as much as I love the movie, that I still feel the ending is a little bit anticlimactic, even though I like the way it ends between Kurt Russell and Keith David, where they're like kind of just like, let's wait. I feel like there should have just been a much bigger, it's literally an explosion and that's it. And I felt like it was a little shortchanged, but you know, film was a little different back then in that sense. I feel like I would never want them to remake it. I know they already did like the kind of sort of remake, which I never even saw and don't want to. But I do feel it's a little anticlimactic based on how much cool shit goes on throughout the rest of the movie.
Was the Fathom version good enough that you could see the nose ring in Richard Dysart's nose?
Yes.
Oh, cool. Yeah. I never got that on VHS.
Yeah, the quality wasn't bad. I will say that, but it didn't feel like I was watching like some great work print or something or whatever. But it was cool. I mean, it's cool. More than anything, it's cool just to see it in a theater.
I saw it in a theater a couple years ago at the Classic Film Festival in Montreal.
There's just something about seeing a movie,
the
big screen. You know, even if it's not the best print, it's like there's still something about it. And what was really cool about it was that there were so many people there, and there was like a family that brought their kids to come see The Thing on a fucking.
I'm ready to hear though it was at the wrong aspect ratio some places.
Yeah. I think that might have been the case for ours too, which is a bummer, but it was still cool to see it, and it's cool to celebrate, you know, that movie, and it was cool to see people were there to watch it. I also watched Spiderhead, which we were talking about earlier. I read the short story as well, which is quite a bit different, but also similar. And I think the problem that I had with Spiderhead, even though I thought the performances were good and everything, is that in trying to portray these characters like Miles Teller's character and Journey Smollet's character, trying to portray them as like, hey, they're criminals, they get kind of a dark past, but their dark past is almost forgivable, right? Like we could forgive them. You know, it's like, oh, well, he was drunk and he was in a car accident.
Yeah, I heard in the book they're much more like vicious.
Yeah, and like the like when he's like, oh, you want to hear about Heather's past? Let me tell you about Heather. And he says patricide, which is killing your father. But in the story, it's infanticide. He killed an infant. And there's like, you know, it's a lot of like subtle little differences there where I was like,
well, Journey Smollett's character killed an infant though.
Right, but there was the other one Heather. Had like it was he's in the movie, he says patricide. She kills in it, but it was an accident, right? It wasn't on purpose, you know.
But so when it was on purpose,
and so I was talking to my wife while we were watching it, and I was like, you know, I get that you want to make these characters somewhat likable, right? Like you want to root for them in some way because they're the quote unquote protagonists, but what I like is being challenged as a viewer by saying, hey, actually, Miles Teller's character was a rapist and a murderer.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to deal with that. I have to deal with who this character is because that's what's in front of me. And I find that to be far more fascinating of a journey because it makes you think like, how can I like this guy?
Yeah.
Well,
that was what was good about The Forgiven. And that's what I asked Ralph Fiennes when I interviewed him, because the character is, when the movie starts, is this guy who basically thinks he can do what he wants because he's rich, and they kill this kid on the road.
Yeah.
And then he's like, oh, fuck it, I'll just pay him off. Like, well, he buries the body and he goes to go party at this place, oasis in the desert. And then he's like, the father shows up, who's a Bedouin chief. And he's like, 1,000 pounds, no problem. And then he's like, no, he goes, you're either coming with me now to this village to apologize to his mother, or me and my men are going to murder everybody here at this party that they're having in the oasis, and there's all these old rich people that are fucking just to do drugs. Right? Yeah. And it's like, we're gonna kill everybody here unless you come with us. So they're like, well, goodbye, go. And then he goes with them, and he goes on this kind of journey of, not necessarily redemption, but where he has to realize there's some things that you can't buy your way out of. Yeah. And there's a fate that he's going towards that you have a sneaking suspicion as it goes on that he really can't escape, but you have to face with some degree of grace and some degree of honor, and that's what the movie's about. And that's why I really liked it. And I think that it's going to rub a lot of people the wrong way, because they're going to have a hard time empathizing with this guy, even though you do as a Westerner, because as much as it's like, you don't, Laura said something very interesting because she was watching The Forgiven as well. And she said that if you'll notice in the first half of the movie, none of the white characters say the Arab characters' names. They're just like, this person here and this person there and whatever. And then at the end, they start saying the names because they become humanized to them. Right. Yeah. And the thing is, when he kills the boy's not human to him. And it's a very uncomfortable frame of mind to get in. And the movie puts you in that frame of mind. Yeah. And it's like,
nameless, faceless people.
Yeah, nameless. And Chastain's like, well, they were probably going to carjack us and, whatever. They were garbage. And it's like, and it was, but in this movie, even though the boys really were going to carjack them, like it was a different thing. It was like, but there's reasons for that. And it kind of like, and even still, even if the kid was a little shit, he still had a family, and he was still a person. He still had worth. And it wasn't,
but that makes it, it makes it a more complex, interesting story when rather than painting everything as black and white, because the world
wasn't the fact that he killed the kid, even that the dad had the problem with, because maybe the kid had it coming. It was more the fact that he just discarded him like nothing. Yeah. And I could buy my way out of it. Like it wasn't an important thing. And that's the problem. That's the thing about the movie. And, it's an unpopular thing to think these days, though, because everybody likes their heroes black and white. And I think maybe that was the problem with Spiderhead, is that they didn't trust you enough as an audience. But at the end of the day, they're making a Netflix, mainstream movie. So,
well, and I feel like that's just what stopped. There's a number of things, and I have another complaint too. But like, why does when you think about like some of the best movies you've ever seen, you've so frequently find that the villain, the antagonist, is the best character of the film. Yeah. Hannibal Lecter is a serial killing psychopath, and people love him. Yeah. Tony Soprano is a psychopath, murderer, criminal. Yeah. People love him.
He's a sociopath. I wouldn't call him a psychopath. I'd call him a sociopath.
Not much of a difference, but yeah, they're you know what I mean. And but the bottom line is, like, you can still root for these characters despite that, right? Like, you still want Tony Soprano to live. People were pissed at the end of Sopranos because they're like, wait, did he die? I don't want Tony Soprano to die. Like, why don't you? Like, he's a fucking murdering criminal.
Well, the thing about the Sopranos was that it always lost, I remember some wise guys, they were like, hey, it was great the first 3 seasons, but the 4th season started to get kind of shitty. And it was because the thing they didn't like about it was that they really did, like, anytime you start to really get on Tony Soprano's side, you see what a piece of shit he actually is. Yeah. So that whole episode at the Bada Bing about the prostitute, about the stripper, and then they just fucking kill her like she's nothing at the end. And even Tony's upset, but not upset enough to like risk his business or anything like that. Yeah. And that was, and people had a really hard time with that because they were like, whoa, but I thought, no, that's bullshit. What the fuck? You know, and it was like, that's how it is though. That's what he is. That's what
mobster. What do you think?
That is what he is at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know, and the thing
but it's still an interesting journey. So I guess that's my thing with Spiderhead is like these characters, they kind of range in you know, in variety in terms of like what they actually had done or, you know, why they were there. And I just felt like you could have made Miles Teller and Journey Smollett characters. They could have been more dastardly. Like, why do they have to be like these people like, oh, they're just misunderstood? Like that just felt like a cop out to me.
I don't know. I didn't mind that so much. But there were things about the movie I really liked. I liked the way it was shot. I loved the music, the yacht rock soundtrack. I thought was great.
Yeah, that was fun. And I think stylistically it was good. The other issue that I had, the biggest issue, was that it really plays as a psychological thriller until the very end. It loses all sense of that and just becomes like a fight movie. Like we got to fight our way out. And it's like, why would you not? You have all the setup, all the stuff there that it could have been more like a Seven style ending where it was a mind game, you know, and using these drugs and everything. But they very quickly are just like, fuck it. Let's have Miles Teller and Chris Hemsworth have a little fight, and then they'll have more fights on the way out.
I think that's
plane crash, and that'll be it.
I think that's the problem with Netflix. I think Netflix wants to send you out in a high, you know. So
it just totally fell apart for me. I thought, man, you could have had like some really great psychological ballsy moment, right? Where maybe Miles Teller does make a bad choice and like kills Journey Smollett with the drugs, or accidentally does it, or has to make some kind of decision that you're just like, oh, but instead it was like, oh no, he's just gonna have a one-up kind of moment, and then
it's fine in the end.
And I was like, that's like a waste. Like it just felt like the setup was fucking wasted there. But where you won't be wasting your time though is with the Old Man on FX.
Oh, I gotta watch that when I get back. I'm gonna binge watch that.
It's amazing. I don't have screeners for it, so I'm watching it live, and I just watched episode 3. And dude, I love this show. I love it. I love Jeff Bridges' performance. And what I really love is the way the show is shot and the way it's made. There's not enough talk about that because it's done in a way, in a style and manner that takes kind of this genre that we've seen probably done, you know, enough.
Yeah, to death. Yeah.
You know, like the aging spy who's actually a badass.
Yeah, when I read about it, I was like, why is he doing this? Like, it sounds like everything that's ever been done before.
And you're so right, but the execution of this show is amazing. I love it. Like,
I'm really looking forward to it.
Fight sequences are exciting, but at the same time, they're not like, oh, he's such a badass. You're just like, oh,
I'm looking forward to seeing him do something kind of outside of like the dude. You know, I find that's the
so
trap
great.
He's fallen into a little bit. Like, I love Bridges, but I think that he kind of loved doing the dude, and he kind of like that's become his thing now. But I thought, you know, that's why I like Bad Time at the El Royale, because he was really kind of challenged in that, and I heard that he's similarly challenged in The Old Man. He's
definitely challenged, and he is a badass motherfucker. But it's in a way that is believable at his age.
The thing is, like, Bridges could be, you know, the thing is, like, he had a range in the 80s, and he could be scary at times. Like, if you think of him in Jagged Edge as like the sociopath,
yeah,
right, you know, or you know, I think of Against All Odds, where he was like a football player, you know, and it was just like he would play different kinds of roles, you know, and his body was really built up in that movie, you know, and like he would do, like, he had a lot of different kind of, you know, and then Blown Away, like he had an interesting career, and it's kind of, you know, he doesn't always get a chance to play that, so I'm curious to see it.
I think you'll dig it. I look forward to talking to you some more about it. I absolutely love it next week. Yeah, I absolutely love it. I cannot recommend it enough to anybody that's looking for something different. Mm-hmm. It also has like flashbacks where they have another actor that's playing a younger version of him who's really great. Mm-hmm. And John Lithgow, of course. John Lithgow's, you know, he's such a classic actor, and he's just great in the show as well. And there's levels of mystery that unravel even through the 3rd episode. That's really great, and there's a number of like holy shit moments throughout. Nice. So I can't recommend it enough. So if you have the means, definitely check out The Old Man. Same as The Terminal List, which is, you know, coming out this week too. It's also just fucking awesome. I also watched Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness again this week, just because it was on Disney Plus. I was kind of like just like laying around. I was like, I was going to put something on. I still think it's a great entry in Marvel's stable. And I think one of the reasons that it succeeds as well as it does is purely Sam Raimi. I feel like he really is just an ace in the hole for that movie. And I don't know that it would have been anywhere near as entertaining without him, to be honest.
It's funny. Nick was rewatching it a little bit before bed one night on his phone, and he was like, one thing he said about it, he liked it, but he did say, like, in hindsight, thinking about it, it was kind of it was kind of a like a jokey way to introduce Mr. Fantastic, where he's so easily dispatched. Like
it's like just it's like
unceremonious introduction. You know, he doesn't even get to throw a punt. He's just like so easily dispatched, to the point that like now he's like, that's probably not going to be the version of, like, you probably won't get Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic in a Fantastic Four movie.
Yeah, you will. I mean, that's kind of the whole rule that they set up.
A shitty introduction, though. It's not a great introduction.
See, I disagree. I thought he was awesome, and you just don't get a chance to really see him do anything. But Mr. Fantastic has never been about his powers. He's always been about his brain, because he's the smartest man in the world in the Marvel universe. So it's always about his intelligence. His powers have always been lame. Like, he's just a stretchy dude. Like, there's nothing really cool about that. But I feel like they can do something with it once they actually make it a dedicated movie. But it'll be Krasinski, because that's the rules that they've essentially established at this point, is that you may look a little different, but it's like the same face, body, all that other stuff. You just may have different hair or facial hair or whatever, but you're essentially the same person in each universe, like in terms of how you look. So that's one of the things I thought was fucking cool when I saw the movie the first time, because I didn't spoil it for myself. And I saw Krasinski. I was like, holy shit, Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic, because that's essentially confirming the casting, given the rules of the multiverse. But overall, I enjoyed the movie quite a bit, and I thought it was really fun and just kind of it's a nice like detour from the standard fare. And I'm really looking forward to Thor: Love and Thunder for that way too, because I know that Taika is gonna deliver something that's.
I think I see it like Thursday morning at like 9 a.m. or some crazy hour like that.
We have tickets to see it in Utah at one of the theaters there on like a Thursday night that it opens. So you'll see it before me, but we'll be seeing it pretty close. So we'll be able to talk about it on the show. So anyways, that's all I've watched this week. Let's move on to another part of my favorite parts of the show, which is talking to our listeners. You ready for some questions, Christopher?
I am. I have 20 minutes before I have to film for CTV.
You ain't going nowhere. You just chill the fuck out. Hang on. Oh, fuck. I'm trying to open up my Twitter. TweetDeck is like going away, so it like fucks me up. And I have it all on my thing. Well, you're lucky. We don't have a lot of questions anyways. Okay, here we go. Ulysses, one of our frequent listeners. We love you, Ulysses. What do you think of the Kenobi show as a whole, as well for episode 6? Well, I feel like we covered that pretty well last.
I haven't seen it yet.
Also, have you guys heard or listened to Batman Unburied audio drama podcast on Spotify? Because it got renewed. It's pretty good. I don't listen to any like superhero podcasts or anything like that. I listen to Smartless. But I think that's.
I listen to. You must remember this, the Karina Longworth podcast. That's the one that I'm really into these days. And I will occasionally listen to Marin, and I used to listen to the Gilbert Gottfried podcast pretty religiously until he died.
How about that?
Yeah.
In terms of Obi-Wan, I know you haven't watched it, so I won't like talk any spoilers or anything, but I felt like there were a few cool moments in the finale, but I don't feel like a shred of them were earned. And I actually got into it with somebody on Twitter this past week after I shared my thoughts about it. And what I found was that there's a lot of people that will jump in particularly when it comes to Star Wars. And I think the reason being is because the fan base is probably the biggest fan base in the world. So you get people from all walks of life that take it very personally. And like this guy, some guy started like, trying to challenge me, and I, explained why I hated it or didn't like it. I didn't hate it. I just didn't really like it. I thought it was a complete missed opportunity in every conceivable way. And he just would not just accept that I did not like this show. And I didn't care for it. And I didn't care for the execution. And we kind of like went back and forth a little bit. And then he eventually got to this point where he's like, he was so desperate to try and paint me as like a racist or a sexist or something. Like that is the true reason that I didn't like the show. And he's like, you're not giving good enough reasons and you're getting political. I was like, I literally have said not a single political thing, like nothing. There's literally no politics. And it just shows that there's so many people that are so dissuaded or persuaded rather by this media narrative. Like, oh, the Star Wars fans are so toxic. And that's why Obi-Wan is like getting this bad reputation. It's like, have you ever stopped to consider for one moment that maybe so many people don't like Obi-Wan because it's not very good?
But there are the fans though that are racist though, and that don't like seeing.
Sure, but like I don't. And here's the thing: I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's racist fans that comment on every fucking fandom out there. But I don't even see that shit. I don't even see it on my Twitter feed. I don't see that. So I'm like, where are you guys? Where's everybody seeing all of this? Like,
Star Wars fans for me tend to be kind of toxic. I think that's why I've kind of stopped really liking Star Wars that much. I find it's gotten annoying.
I mean, it is annoying. It's annoying that like
you can't have a discussion with anybody about Star Wars anymore. And
you can't. Like, I mean, and you can't say anything negative because then you get all the people that think it's great coming against you. And then if you say something is great about it, then you get people that come out and say, nah, that was not very good.
Think that Nick had a good point when we were talking about it too, is that he said that, the issue is like, let's say the Reva character or any of the side characters could have been the greatest characters in the world. People still probably wouldn't have liked it because the show missed one very important thing. It should have been Obi-Wan Kenobi. It should have been, he was the lead. And it was just, they were trying to build up characters that you can spin off and make other shows. Cause you can tell they probably want to do the Reva show or they want to do this. And it's just you're trying, or young Leia, they're trying to spin off characters. Whereas that should more come naturally after you fall in love with the character first, rather than, make it like it's like what they used to do in the 80s, but backdoor pilots where this character would come in like, well, if you like him, you could find him each and every week, and it was
and I mean, that's absolutely true because there's so many characters that just eat up screen time on Obi-Wan for no fucking reason. Characters
they're trying a bunch of characters. They're trying a bunch of characters. Who can we spin off? Who are they going to like? And it's like, we have to get cool enough actors that, potentially they could have a show. And then
I feel like they'll just announce a Reva spinoff just to piss people off.
Anytime now you get somebody cast in a Star Wars show, you have to think that, they make there's an idea that potentially they could get a spinoff.
And that's just, I feel like that's where they've lost the pulse for Obi-Wan. They lost it. They did not make a show in any way. Do I feel like they made a show that was the show they should have made for Obi-Wan?
Too much TV.
It was too much bullshit. It was too many side characters that amounted to nothing. The Leia actress sucked. Reva sucked, and it had nothing to do.
I didn't think she sucked.
It has nothing to do with
wasn't great. But the performance was good.
Whose performance was good?
I thought her performance was fine. I thought the character wasn't great, but I thought her performance was totally fine.
For Reva?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Did you watch the same show?
I did watch. Yes.
Terrible. And it's nothing against Moses Ingram. I think Moses Ingram is, she could be great in anything else, but like the character is just not good. And the performance isn't good. I don't even really blame her. I blame and I said this before, it's like, how does like Disney and Lucasfilm, like the people that have all these resources to them, how do they think that's good enough? That's where I'm like, how does that happen when you have a monopoly like this and this is what you put out thinking it's good? I think they did a disservice to Moses Ingram. They're like, dude, they set her up for failure. They're like, they let that go. They should have been like, no, Moses, we need more from you, or we need this, or we need that. Instead, they're like, perfect, great, that's so wonderful, but it's not. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. And hopefully they learn some lessons from this rather than take it as like we see this as a challenge and we're going to flip off everybody. I
feel like the lesson from it for them is that it was very successful because it did really well. So that's like people were watching.
It did well in terms of people watching it, but like critically.
I mean, I think the thing is also thing you and I need to realize too is that, we're guys in our 40s. We don't have the pulse anymore of the fandom. We don't. We're not the fandom anymore. It's the much younger audience. That was one thing they were talking all about at VidCon, the 18 to 35 demo that everybody wants. We're not in that anymore. Not us.
Well, I mean, we're still fans though, and we're still
fans, but we're not the ones that they're building everything around though anymore. It is what it is. That's what.
And it's the people that are our age that are actually making and producing this shit.
Yeah, but we're not the ones that are watching. It's the same thing as when my dad hated all the movies that I was watching.
There's definitely some truth to that.
The circle continues.
Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely some truth to that, but at the same time, you're still seeing like a pushback against the material, which should, listen, that only makes things better. Like people get so bent out of shape over like, if you say something wasn't very good, like how dare you? It's like, well, this is how you voice, like, this is why like some movies have a franchise and some don't.
Yeah.
You know, ultimately it works or it doesn't. Personally, I hope that Obi-Wan gets a second season, and I hope that they do a better job.
Sure.
That's it. I love Ewan McGregor in the role. I think he's great. I'd love to see more of him do it. And I'd love to see more of him, Obi-Wan, you know, relegate the side characters. You can have less side characters and give them more work, give them more involvement. You know, honestly, Reva should have been the only one. Why do you have to have all of these fucking Inquisitors? Why do you have to have every single thing? She could have really had a chance to shine. Instead, they're just throwing all these other things in there. It just really wasn't even fair to her in terms as an actress. It's just like, fuck, we're putting a lot on your shoulders here and we're giving you like very little time to make it happen. So I just think that the direction was pretty off the mark there. There's also some problems with the end lightsaber battle in terms of that's actually a technical thing that they fucked up, which I encourage everybody to read up. There's actually an article written by one of my contemporaries at Screen Rant. He wrote this really, really interesting article about the technical issues that went into the last lightsaber battle and how the types of lights that they used is like a huge problem for the execution of this that probably cannot be fixed. I find it very interesting. I think everybody should take a look at that. It's a really fascinating look at how, you know, technology can also, as much as it advances, can also be working against us too. So anyways, it's an interesting article. I think
that was actually one of the issues I had with Elvis is I thought the digital backgrounds looked very phony at times.
Yeah, it did. And you're right, because it was like very much like, it didn't feel realistic.
Like when they're on the Hollywood sign, they're not actually at the Hollywood sign. They're on a soundstage.
No. Oh God, it's so obvious, you know? Yeah, absolutely.
They're never actually in Vegas, you know, and that was a little.
I think it's one of the biggest problems in Hollywood right now is they've become so reliant on green screen and digital backgrounds that.
Well, then the thing is,
you lose all sense of authenticity.
But they were also able to do Elvis for $85 million, and it probably would have cost $200 million a couple of years ago.
I know. I mean, that's the rub, right? It's like,
yeah,
it's a tricky thing to figure out, but it's like, what are we losing versus what are we gaining? I think that's something that has to be looked at. So, anyways, that journey shall continue. Let's see if we have any. I think we had one other question. Shep Monet, is the Furiosa discussion going to cover the rumor of Chris Hemsworth playing a young Immortan Joe?
Sure did.
We got you covered, bro. We got you covered. Let me see if there's anything else real quick. That might be it. I think that's it. Everybody's busy this Sunday. So that's it. That wraps us up, Chris. You're going to make it just in time to do your other stuff. Chris is in LA. He's going to have to go home soon. LA is never going to be the same without him.
Tomorrow.
Damn. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Really proud of our terminal list interviews that we got for this program. And I hope that you guys enjoyed them too. Had a lot of fun talking to them, talking to the terminal list guys. Hope you guys check out the show as well. I love it. And I hope Chris checks it out and we can get his perspective and his take on down the line. But I do recommend it to anybody. This is just looking for something a little different and something with some good fucking action. Cool. As well. We're kind of missing that for a while there. So that's it for this week. I thank you guys for joining us. Chris, thank you as well. We thank you for joining us. Appreciate you guys taking the time to listen, and we will catch you guys next time.